Now, as you probably know, it's the eve of the ballot, and citizens and residents of Ondo State are preparing for the upcoming governorship election on Saturday. It comes 11 months after the death of the former governor, Rotimi Akeredolu, and more than 2 million voters are registered to vote. The contest is between 18 candidates, although there are reports that some have dropped out. Of the lot, the leading contenders are thought to be from the APC, which is the incumbents, the PDP, the Labour Party, and the ZLP. The police have restricted the movement of vehicles on election day, and civil society groups such as YIAGA Africa have suggested there might be a low turnout. So how much of a test is this ballot likely to be for the Electoral Commission, INEC, and for the security agencies in the face of meddlesome politicians who appear determined to tilt the ballot in their favour? Well, for more on this, I'm joined now on the line from the Ondo State capital, Akure, by the head of elections at YIAGA Africa, Paul James. Mr. James, thank you very much indeed for joining us. I know it's been a busy period for you, and we appreciate your taking the time to talk to us. And of course, as you leaf through the plans by the Electoral Commission, INEC, the political parties and the security agencies for this Ondo State governorship elections, and as you travel through the streets of the capital, Akure, and the hinterland, is it all looking good to you?
Yeah, thank you very much, Charles, and good evening. For us at YIAGA, we have been on ground since the 28th of October, where we've been observing the process and also following up with stakeholders. And then I can say for INEC, for instance, INEC has checked all the likely boxes for the election so far. Last week on November 5th, it conducted a mock accreditation exercise in 12 locations across the 6 local government, which was hugely successful by the standard of the commission, although turnout for the exercise was low. The exercise allowed the commission to test over 12,000 beavers that will be deployed for the election. According to the commission, 4,002 will be deployed to the polling units, while the other 8,012 will be at the INEC reserves at the registration area centers. Again, in the stakeholder meeting that I held last week, Thursday, the INEC chairman did say that to a large extent the commission had implemented 11.
Yeah, I apologize for that. It looks like we've lost the audio with Mr. James there. We will try to reconnect with him as soon as we possibly can. But I mean, he was simply reiterating the fact that they've been on the ground in Ondo State for a long period of time, and that they have received assurances from the Electoral Commission, INEC. They observed the exercise that was carried out to test the system and its efficacy. From what he was saying before we lost his audio there, it just seemed as though things were apparently shipshape and seaworthy. I mean, we've heard INEC earlier this evening saying that they are 100% ready for this election, and there was no equivocation there. They did say they were 100% ready, so clearly they are going to be held to that assertion. I was going to find out from Mr. James whether or not that there is evidence on the ground to bear that out, but he seemed to be moving in that direction anyway. The INEC were saying earlier today that not some, but all polling stations will be open at exactly 6 a.m. In the morning. That's Saturday morning, in the next few hours from now. And that there will be no logistics challenges, and they were absolutely unequivocal in that assertion. So, as I said, they will be held to account and be clearly, people will be watching. I mean, at least several civil society groups have lots of people down there who are keeping an eye on things. And I'm told that we've got Paul James, who is the man in charge of elections at YIAGA Africa. I apologize, I'm not quite sure what happened, but we lost your audio there. But you were telling us, you were assessing the preparedness of the Electoral Commission, INEC. Please continue.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, so according to the INEC chairman, that INEC had made commitment that we're going to see three things in the election. One, improvement in the management of logistics. Two, improvement in the technologies that will be deployed, including also the upload of polling unit level results, and then also the general administration of the election. We are going to hold INEC to those standards because, of course, the people of the state will not expect less from the commission. One of the things that we think we may work for the commission is that there are better infrastructures here. If you compare the road networks in the state to the other state that the commission has conducted elections in recent past. And like I said, it has been closing ranks with the National Union of Road Transport Workers as well as the Maritime Union. What we expect as civil society and also observers in the election is that there will be early commencement of polls. We saw the signs early when the commission deployed, the sensitive materials. They arrived in the state on Monday this week, and then by Tuesday, Wednesday, they had already batched them by the local government. Yesterday, by midday, commission had dispatched all of this to the local government. This morning, we had some of our team members that went to at least 7 local governments. We were in Idonre, Ifedore, Akure South, Ondo East, Ondo West, as well as Owo, to assess INEC's preparedness for the election. And we can confirm that as of the time we went, most of the materials were already heading to the registration area center. So like I said, based on those things that we have seen, INEC has done in the last couple of weeks or even last couple of days, we are optimistic that the commission this time will do something better and, of course, meet the aspiration or the desires of the people of Ondo.
Well, I mean, I'm very glad to hear you say that, and I expect that a lot of Nigerians will be very reassured by your comments because, of course, they trust you as an election observer and a group that has consistently been a very good assessor of the way elections are conducted in this country. INEC said they are 100% ready for this election. I was going to ask you whether there's evidence on the ground to bear out that claim, but you've answered that. INEC are saying that all polling stations will be open at exactly 6 a.m. and that there will be no logistics challenges. So we will, get your assessment by the time those polling stations open and by the conclusion of voting tomorrow. But beyond INEC, what about the dimension of vote buying, voter inducement, intimidation, that sort of thing? Has that been tangential in this election, or has it been a big part of the mix?
Yeah, so sadly, Charles, this is becoming a permanent feature, if you like, in the electoral process. We saw the glimpses of vote buying in the build-up to the election where politicians in their usual theatrics were giving voters between 2,000 to 5,000 naira at campaign rallies. Of course, there is the usual distribution of, the distribution of food items also at campaign rallies. At some point in October, thereabout, we saw also politicians also distributing fertilizers to farmers. Sometimes it's actually always very difficult to draw the line between palliatives and vote buying, especially in the build-up to the election. But then what we fear, a part of the preparatory activities, is the fact that political public campaign actually commenced late. Most of this campaign did not start until the middle of October. So we were apprehensive that we hope they were not saving up resources to be able to vote on election day. On our part as election observers, we had called out to the relevant agencies, the anti-graft agencies, the Nigerian police that will be also in charge of election security, to keep an eye on the process and ensure that if people are involved in those sort of nefarious activities, that they are apprehended and brought to book. We don't want them to territorialize the conversation this time. What we have seen in the past is that these things will be happening in public glare, and the police or the security agencies there will tell you, oh, we will not act until INEC tells us to act, because by the electoral law, the commission is the one in charge of the election. But of course, the roof will not be coming down and the security will just stay and not do anything. We expect them to be professional. If there is one thing that has been consistent in the public communication by the security agencies, is that they will be professional in the discharge of their duties. And one of our board members joked earlier to say, whenever you hear the build-up to this election that the security agency will tell you they'll be professional, they expect them to be professional in the election. So again, just like INEC, we are going to hold them by those standards. For us at YIAGA, we said the election again will be determined by 3 critical tests: the resilience of the citizens who participate in the election, the ability of the security agencies to be impartial and also professional in the discharge of their duties, and also on INEC also to be able to conduct a good and better election in Ondo State. So, of course, we have our observers already on ground. We are deploying 324 observers to the field tomorrow, and at different intervals we shall be providing updates based on our findings from the field.
And thanks very much indeed for that update. Beyond that, of course, do you detect any headline-grabbing conflicts between the political parties themselves where you are? I mean, are they contributing to any significantly disruptive levels of violence in this election?
Well, while there has been much decorum or civility in the process, of course, we saw traces of indicators for election violence. We had locations where destruction of billboards were reported. We had locations where intimidation and harassments were reported. Places like Idonre local government, Akure South local government, Ondo West, Ondo East local governments. For us at YIAGA, we categorize these places as a possible hotspots because there were a lot of political activities that happened around those locations. And we thought also, because they had happened in the build-up to the election and there was not so much of arrest or, effort at that point to stop them, we were worried that those does not snowball also also happen on election day. For instance, in Idonre, when altercations happened, the PDP specifically reached out to YIAGA to raise concerns that the incumbent party was intimidating them in that local government. Of course, we reached out to the security agency as well with that report, and they did confirm while there were altercations in those places, those were also resolved amicably, professionally. The complaints also in the build-up to the election was about access to certain locations for public campaign in the state. But if you look through all of these activities, there haven't been major incidents of violence reported. We documented 2 incidents. One in Ifedora, where there was communal clashes, and then also in Ose local government, where there were reports of kidnapping at some point early in October. Those also, according to the police, have been addressed. If there is one thing, to be honest, that I may commend the security in the election, is that communication between the agencies. We think there is a lot of interagency collaboration that had happened in this election. They all seem to be speaking with one voice. We met them at different fora, and the police said the same thing about how they had done a lot of security mappings and how they are planning for the election. The same also from the Civil Defense Corps, especially about how they have been collaborating with the police as a lead agency to ensure a peaceful election. So again, What we had charged, encouraged the security to do is to ensure also total deployment to the polling units on election day. They had also committed to that at least we will see a minimum of 2 security personnel deployed to each of the 3,933 polling units. Again, we will be keeping an eye on that process tomorrow and see whether also they are true to those words that they have, those commitments that they have made.
So, I mean, you're there on the ground in Ondo State. You've got your, if you like, your deputies deployed across the state. I mean, what do you see as the largest, potentially the most destructive element in this weekend's ballots? What is the real beast that most needs to be targeted and focused upon in order to make this election freer, fairer, and more representative of the will of the people of Ondo State?
Well, if there is one other thing that we will be concerned about in the election, and the sort of political pressure that will come from the political class, because we saw that in the recently conducted elections in Edo State, where in the weekend of the election, we saw a lot of politically exposed persons in the state. This has already started. 2 days ago, one of the parties had its own final campaigns in the state, and we saw also the sort of political gladiators that came to town. We have had reports of some of these that have remained in town to provide support to their party in the election. We hope that, they will understand what their role is, perhaps even if it is as observers, and also stay off from putting pressure on the election commission. The elections in Edo State, to a large extent, at the polling unit were credible. What was problematic in Edo was at the results collation. So whether this is the new form of new tactics of election rigging that the politicians are trying to introduce, I think is something that also needs to be checked. So we want for observers to have unhindered access to every aspect of the electoral process, because we are here for the people. We'll observe on behalf of the people and provide credible report based on what we have seen at the polling unit and also at the collation center. And then for the security is also to stay alert for persons that have no business whatsoever to be in the state. I don't think they should be allowed to come near the vicinity of the polling unit or even to the collation center. So we expect, like I said, decorum, especially from the political class, to allow INEC to do its professional duty.
And Mr. James, you have suggested, YIAGA Africa has suggested that there is likely to be a low voter turnout in this election. Why have you come to that conclusion? Have you detected much apathy, perhaps fear of violence, or something else?
Well, for those of us that have been on ground for a while here, to be honest, even today, you don't get this euphoria like an election is happening. In some sense, whether or not because people are happy with the status quo, we don't know, or whether or not because of also the economic realities. But based on what we have seen, and like we said, some sort of intimidation and harassment that had happened in certain quarters, and where we thought people did not get the kind of response that they had expected from the security agencies, we thought that is also enough to put fear in their own mind. And if you look at the trajectory of voter turnout in the elections from 2012, 2012 turnout was at 38%. By 2016, turnout dropped to 35%, and by the 2020 election, turnout further dropped to 32%. While we are not basing it based off what are the antecedents of the past, we thought based on the indicators that we have seen, the rhetoric by political parties, and even the lack of activities that connect to the people. Political campaigns started late, so we think they did not reach out to the people as much as it was anticipated. Though on the part of INEC, National Orientation Agency, and civil society, voter education did happen. They may not have happened to the level that you had expected, will help to galvanize the sort of motivation or the interest to participate in the election. But again, I hope that also the people of Ondo State will surprise us tomorrow. For me, to be honest, for every election, my hope is to see that we'll have new narratives to talk about our election. Turnout had never gone beyond 38% in the state. We are hoping that Ondo will surprise us. As much as we know we had predicted low turnout, I think they should surprise us by coming out to engage the process tomorrow.
Well, we'll see what happens tomorrow. I want to thank you very much indeed for joining us. Paul James is the head of elections at YIAGA Africa, and he was talking to me on the line there from Akure, the capital of Ondo State.